At his funeral, a box arrived, holding the 29-year truth. He never dared to tell me she thought the funeral would be the end of her grief, the final goodbye to the man she'd loved for nearly 3 decades. Instead, it became the beginning of the deepest wound of her life, a pain that made the loss of her husband seem almost simple by comparison. As mourners gathered around the closed casket at the cemetery, dressed in black and sharing quiet memories, a stranger approached her with measured, deliberate steps. An elderly man she'd never seen before, carrying a sealed wooden box that looked worn and heavy with time. He introduced himself as her husband's attorney and explained that her husband had left this box behind specifically for the day he died, with strict instructions that it be delivered to her at the funeral, in front of witnesses, so she couldn't refuse to accept it. Inside that box were 29 years of hidden truth, carefully documented and preserved. Dozens of letters he'd written but never sent to people she didn't know existed. Receipts from places she didn't know he'd visited spanning their entire marriage. Photographs of people she had never met but who were clearly important to him, and a handwritten confession that shattered every single memory she had of their life together. Every anniversary dinner, every family vacation, every quiet evening watching television, all of it now contaminated by the truth he'd been hiding in plain sight for nearly 3 decades. He didn't take the secret to the grave like most people do with their darkest truths. He left it for her to carry alone, to process without him there to explain or defend or apologize. Left it to destroy her peace, rewrite her history, and force her to question whether anything in her marriage had been real. Before I tell you what was inside that box and the devastating 29-year secret this woman's husband hid from her until the day of his funeral, you need to stop right now and subscribe to this channel immediately. Hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell, because this story will take you on an emotional journey, so devastating and complex, you won't be able to stop thinking about it for days. I share true stories about secrets, betrayal, hidden lives, and the truths people reveal only after death every single week, and this one will absolutely wreck you. Smash that like button right this second, because your engagement helps these powerful stories reach people who desperately need to know they're not alone in discovering that the person they loved was living a double life. Drop a comment telling me, have you ever discovered something about someone after they died that completely changed your understanding of who they were and what your relationship meant? This is a true story that happened 6 months ago, and I promise you that what you're imagining is inside that box is not what's actually there. The truth is more complicated, more heartbreaking, and more devastating than anything you're predicting right now. Stay with me until the very end because this revelation will haunt you. My name is Linda. I'm 56 years old, and 6 months ago, my husband James died suddenly at age 57 from a brain aneurysm. We'd been married for 29 years, together since we were in our mid-20s. I thought I knew everything about him, thought we'd built a marriage on honesty and transparency and deep emotional intimacy. Thought the secrets between us were small and insignificant, surprise birthday gifts, white lies about how much he'd spent on golf clubs. I was catastrophically wrong, and the box that arrived at his funeral revealed a truth so profound, so devastating, so completely hidden that it destroyed my understanding of my entire adult life. If you're already hooked on this mystery, hit that like button right now and comment "funeral box," because what Linda discovers will absolutely devastate you. James and I met when we were both 27 years old. He was an accountant at a large firm. I was a paralegal at a law office. We met through mutual friends, dated for a year, got engaged, married quickly because we were deeply in love and didn't want to wait. Our marriage seemed normal and happy from every angle. We had 2 children, a son and a daughter, now adults living their own lives. James worked steadily his entire career, eventually becoming a partner at his accounting firm. We lived in a nice suburban house, took regular vacations, had a comfortable middle-class life. Nothing extraordinary, but solid and good. James traveled occasionally for work. Maybe once a month he'd have a 2 or 3 day business trip to meet with clients in other cities. I never questioned these trips. He was an accountant. Travel was part of the job. He always came home on schedule. He'd call me every evening from his hotel, tell me about boring client meetings, complain about bland hotel food. It all seemed perfectly normal and unremarkable. There were tiny inconsistencies over the years that I noticed but dismissed. Sometimes James would mention a city he'd traveled to that wasn't on his work calendar. Sometimes he'd have souvenirs from places that didn't match his business destinations. Sometimes credit card charges would appear from restaurants in cities where he supposedly hadn't been. But I rationalized all of it. Maybe he'd had a last-minute trip he forgot to mention. Maybe he'd picked up souvenirs at an airport gift shop. Maybe the credit card company had made an error. I never seriously suspected anything wrong because James was stable, reliable, devoted, not the type to have affairs or secret lives. Subscribe right now because what James was actually doing on those business trips will shock you to your absolute core. 6 months ago, James collapsed at work without warning. Brain aneurysm, massive and fatal. He was dead before the ambulance arrived at the hospital. Sudden, shocking, devastating. One moment he was alive and healthy, planning our upcoming 30th anniversary trip. The next moment he was gone, leaving me a widow at 56. The funeral was held a week later at our church. Hundreds of people attended. James's colleagues, our friends, family members, people from the community. Everyone sharing stories about what a good man James was, how dedicated he was to his work and his family, how reliable and trustworthy, how he'd been a faithful husband and devoted father. As we gathered at the cemetery for the burial, an elderly man I'd never seen before approached me. He was distinguished-looking, probably in his 70s, wearing an expensive suit. "Mrs. Morrison? Linda Morrison?" he asked formally. "Yes," I said, confused. "I'm sorry. Do I know you?" "No, we've never met. My name is Harold Stevens. I was your husband's attorney for private matters. James gave me very specific instructions to deliver this to you on the day of his funeral, in the presence of witnesses." He handed me a sealed wooden box, maybe the size of a large shoebox, with a metal clasp and a small lock. Along with it, he gave me a key and a sealed envelope with my name written in James's handwriting. My hands shook as I took them. "What is this?" I asked. "What private matters? James and I used the same attorney for our estate planning. Leave a comment saying what's in the box if you're desperate to know what Linda is about to discover." Harold Stevens looked uncomfortable. "I'm not at liberty to discuss the contents. James hired me 28 years ago to hold this box and deliver it to you upon his death. I've never opened it. I don't know what's inside, but he was very clear that you were to receive it at the funeral, not before, not after. I'm fulfilling my obligation to my late client." Then he walked away, leaving me standing at my husband's graveside holding a mysterious box and a letter, surrounded by confused mourners who were whispering about what just happened. I wanted to open the box immediately, but the funeral continued, the burial, the prayer, the final goodbyes. I had to stand there for another hour pretending to focus on the ceremony while this box burned in my hands, screaming to be opened. Finally, the funeral ended. People returned to our house for the reception. I excused myself, went upstairs to my bedroom, locked the door, and opened James's letter with trembling hands. The letter was dated 3 months before his death. It read, "My dearest Linda, if you're reading this, I'm gone. And Harold has given you the box I've kept hidden from you for our entire marriage. I need to start by saying I love you. I have always loved you. Everything I'm about to reveal is the truth I was too cowardly to tell you while I was alive. I knew if I told you, I would lose you, and I couldn't bear that. So I carried this secret for 29 years, and now I'm making you carry it alone. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Please read everything in the box. You deserve to know who I really was. James." My heart was pounding violently as I used the small key to open the box. Inside were layers of items that told a story I never knew existed. On top was a photograph of James, looking much younger, maybe in his early 20s. He was standing with his arm around another young man, both of them smiling at the camera with obvious affection. On the back of the photo was written in James's handwriting, "Me and Michael, age 23, the love of my life." Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications right now because what Linda discovers about her husband's secret life is absolutely devastating. I stared at that photograph, my mind refusing to process what I was seeing. James with another man. The love of my life. What did that mean? I kept digging through the box with shaking hands. Found more photographs. James and this man Michael in various settings. At the beach, at restaurants, in an apartment, always looking intimate and happy. Found letters. Dozens of letters written by James to Michael over a period of several years before James and I met. Love letters. Explicit, passionate declarations of love between two men. Found a journal. James's personal journal from his early 20s documenting his relationship with Michael. Entry after entry describing their love affair, their plans for the future, their struggles with family rejection because they were a gay couple in the early 1980s when acceptance was virtually non-existent, and then entries describing Michael's death. Michael had died of AIDS-related complications in 1985 when he and James were both 25 years old. James's grief in those journal entries was devastating to read. Michael was my soulmate, the only person I'll ever love this deeply. I don't know how to survive without him. My family says his death is God's judgment. They want me to pretend he never existed. I can't do that. But I also can't keep living as a gay man in a world that hates us. I found more journal entries from the years after Michael's death, James describing his decision to suppress his sexuality completely, to date women, to try to be straight. I met Linda today. She's kind and pretty and safe. I think I could build a life with her. It wouldn't be the passionate love I had with Michael, but it would be stable and acceptable. My family would approve. Society would accept us. I could finally stop fighting. Share this video immediately if you're absolutely devastated by what James did to both himself and Linda. I couldn't breathe, couldn't process what I was reading. James was gay, had been in love with a man who died of AIDS, had married me not because he loved me passionately, but because I was safe and acceptable, had built our entire 29-year marriage on suppressing his authentic sexuality. I kept reading, tears streaming down my face. Found letters James had written to Michael over the years after his death, letters he never sent because Michael was gone. I married Linda today. She's a good woman. I'll try to make her happy. But you were my love, Michael. You'll always be my love. I'm sorry I'm not brave enough to live as the man you knew I was. More letters over the years. Linda's pregnant with our first child. I should feel happy, but I feel like a fraud. Like I'm playing a role of husband and father when the real me died with you. It's our 10th anniversary today. Linda thinks I'm happy. I am happy in many ways. She's a wonderful partner. Our children are beautiful. Our life is good. But there's always this piece of me that's locked away. The piece that loved you. The piece that's still gay even though I've spent a decade pretending otherwise. I found receipts. Hundreds of them over the years. Receipts from gay bars in cities James had traveled to for business. Receipts from pride events. Receipts from LGBTQ bookstores and community centers. All the business trips James had taken over 29 years. He'd been visiting gay spaces in distant cities where no one knew him, living his authentic life in secret for a few days at a time before returning to his straight life with me. Found more recent journal entries from the last few years. I'm 55 years old and I've spent 3 decades living a lie. Linda deserves to know the truth. Our children deserve to know their father is gay. But how do I tell them now? How do I explain that I built an entire life on deception? I'm a coward. I've always been a coward. Michael would be disappointed in me. Subscribe and turn on notifications because Linda's process of dealing with this revelation is heartbreaking and complex. The final item in the box was a long letter James had written to me just weeks before his death. I read it through tears that wouldn't stop. Linda, by now you've seen the photographs and read the journals and letters. You know the truth I've hidden for our entire marriage. I'm gay. I've always been gay. I fell in love with a man named Michael when I was 22 and he died of AIDS when we were 25. His death destroyed me. And I didn't have the courage to keep living as a gay man in a world that condemned us. So I suppressed everything, started dating women, met you, convinced myself I could be happy in a straight marriage, even though that meant denying a fundamental part of who I was. You asked me once early in our relationship if I'd ever been in love before. I lied and said no. The truth was, Michael was the only person I'd ever loved with complete passion and freedom. What I felt for you was different. Affection, respect, companionship. I genuinely cared for you, but it wasn't the same. I want you to know that I tried to be a good husband, tried to make you happy, Tried to build a life that honored our vows even though those vows were based on you not knowing my authentic self. I was faithful to you physically. I never had affairs with men during our marriage, never acted on the attractions I still felt, but I was unfaithful emotionally. Every business trip where I'd visit gay bars just to feel normal for a few hours. Every pride event I'd attend anonymously just to be around my community. I was living a double life, even though I never touched another person. Leave a comment saying double life if you think James's deception was unforgivable, even though he was struggling with his sexuality. I know you'll feel betrayed. Know you'll question whether anything in our marriage was real. And I can't give you easy answers because the truth is complicated. Did I love you? Yes, in my own limited way. Did you deserve a husband who was fully present and authentically attracted to you? Absolutely. Did our children deserve a father who wasn't living a lie? Yes. I failed all of you by not being brave enough to live as my authentic self. Why am I telling you this now, after my death, when I can't face the consequences? Because I'm a coward. I couldn't bear to see the pain and betrayal in your eyes while I was alive. Couldn't bear to destroy the family we built. Couldn't bear to admit that I'd wasted your life by marrying you under false pretenses. So I took the coward's way out, leaving you the truth only after I'm gone. I'm sorry, Linda. I'm so profoundly sorry. You deserved so much better than what I gave you. James. I sat on my bedroom floor, surrounded by the contents of that box, and sobbed. My husband of 29 years was gay, had been in love with a man who died before we met, had married me not out of passionate love, but because I was safe and would help him live a socially acceptable life, had spent our entire marriage suppressing his authentic self and living secret moments of truth on business trips to distant cities, had never been fully present with me because part of him had died with Michael in 1985. Every memory of our marriage was now contaminated by this truth. Our wedding day, James standing at the altar knowing he was gay and marrying a woman anyway. The birth of our children, James becoming a father while secretly wishing he could have built a family with a man. Our anniversary celebrations, James pretending to be happy while carrying the weight of his double life. All of it was a performance, a carefully maintained lie. The mourners downstairs at the reception were confused when I didn't return. My daughter finally came upstairs and knocked on the door. "Mom, are you okay? What was in that box?" I had to make a decision immediately. Did I tell my children the truth about their father? Did I reveal that the man they'd just buried had been living a lie their entire lives? Did I keep the secret and protect James's memory? Hit that like button if you think Linda's children deserve to know the truth about who their father really was. I opened the door and let my daughter in, showed her the box, watched her face change as she processed the photographs and letters and journals. "Dad was gay?" she whispered in shock. "Our entire childhood was a lie?" "I don't know what it was," I admitted. "Your father loved us in his own way. But yes, he was gay and suppressing it, and we never knew." Over the next days and weeks, I shared the contents of the box with my son as well. Both of my children struggled to process this revelation about their father, felt betrayed that he'd hidden such a fundamental part of himself, felt sad that he'd lived in such pain and secrecy, felt angry that he'd built a family on a foundation of deception. I struggled with all those feelings too, but I also had to process the more personal betrayal, that James had married me knowing he wasn't attracted to women, that he'd made me unwittingly participate in his closeted life, that he'd wasted 29 years of my life with someone who couldn't fully love me the way I deserved. Friends and family were confused by my complicated grief in the months after James's death. They expected me to be mourning my beloved husband. Instead, I was processing a betrayal so profound it overshadowed the loss. How do you mourn someone who you discover was never fully honest with you? How do you grieve a marriage that you now know was built on one person suppressing their authentic self? I was also angry at James for leaving me this truth only after his death, for not having the courage to tell me while he was alive so we could have dealt with it together, for making me carry this knowledge alone, process it without him there to answer questions or apologize or explain. He took the coward's way out, as he admitted in his letter, left me to deal with the wreckage of our marriage after he was safely dead. Subscribe to this channel if you believe people owe their spouses honesty about fundamental aspects of their identity, even when truth is difficult. But over time, I also came to understand the impossible situation James was in. He came of age in the early 1980s when being gay often meant death from AIDS and complete rejection from family and society. He watched the love of his life die of a disease that was being ignored because it primarily affected gay men. He faced a choice: live authentically as a gay man and risk losing everything, or suppress himself and try to build a socially acceptable life. He chose suppression, and it destroyed him slowly over decades. Did that excuse lying to me for 29 years? No. I still deserved honesty, still deserved a husband who was fully present and genuinely attracted to me. But I came to understand that James was a victim of his time and circumstances too. A gay man who couldn't see a path to living authentically, so he buried that part of himself and tried to be someone he wasn't. I found a local LGBTQ organization that supports families dealing with late-in-life coming out or posthumous revelations. Discovered I wasn't alone. Many people have discovered after a spouse's death that they were gay or bisexual and had been hiding it for decades. I attended support groups, talked to others who'd experienced similar revelations, slowly processed my complicated grief. 6 months after James's death, I'm still processing what I learned from that box. Still figuring out how to reconcile the man I thought I knew with the man he actually was. Still mourning both the loss of my husband and the loss of the marriage I thought we had. My children are processing too, working through their feelings about having a father who couldn't be honest about who he was, trying to honor his memory while acknowledging the pain his deception caused. I've also thought a lot about Michael, the man James truly loved, the man who died at 25, leaving James so broken he couldn't imagine loving anyone that way again. I wish James had been brave enough to keep living as himself after Michael's death. Wish he'd found another man to love instead of marrying me as a cover. Wish he'd lived in a world where being gay wasn't so dangerous that suppression seemed like the only option. Leave a comment telling me what you think. Was James a victim of his circumstances, or did he make selfish choices that hurt Linda unfairly? The box that arrived at James's funeral didn't give me closure. It gave me questions, pain, and a complete rewriting of my history. 29 years of marriage that I thought were built on mutual love were actually built on James suppressing his authentic self and me unknowingly participating in his closeted life. Every anniversary, every family vacation, every quiet evening together, all of it was contaminated by the truth he was hiding. James didn't take his secret to the grave. He left it for me to carry alone, left me with the knowledge that would have allowed me to make different choices if I'd known it earlier. Left me to process our entire marriage through this new, devastating lens, without him there to explain or defend himself. If this story has affected you deeply, if it's made you think about honesty, authenticity, and the lies people tell to survive in unaccepting worlds, do something important right now. Hit that like button so this story reaches more people who need to hear it. Subscribe to this channel and turn on notifications, because I share true stories about hidden lives and complicated truths every single week. Leave a comment sharing your thoughts about James's choices and Linda's situation. Share this video because there are other people processing similar revelations who need to know they're not alone. At his funeral, a box arrived holding the 29-year truth he never dared to tell me. Inside was proof that my husband was gay, had been in love with a man who died of AIDS, had married me not out of passion, but because I was safe and acceptable, had spent nearly 3 decades living a double life, suppressing his authentic self, carrying grief and secrets I never knew existed. The revelation destroyed my understanding of our entire marriage, but it also helped me understand the impossible situation he faced as a gay man in an unaccepting world. I'm Linda. I'm 56, and 6 months ago, I learned that everything I thought I knew about my marriage was incomplete. This is my story of processing a truth that arrived too late to change anything, but soon enough to hurt deeply. The end.